Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Very, very excited to talk about your film. But first, we got to do the logo. All right, fancy stuff. Lifeguards versus zombies. Where did this idea originate? How did this project come to be?
Okay, so when I first moved to LA, I needed a job, so I became a lifeguard. And while I was being a lifeguard and a swim instructor, just crazy things would happen. I mean, I started writing everything down. You know, the seniors who would come in for the water exercise classes and complain that the water was too cold, or just the kids and how they acted during swim lessons or whatever. It was always something. It was a really interesting job, and just sort of learning a lot about LA people, and kind of like, getting my feet wet, as they say, as a newbie here. And this was a long time ago, 17 years ago, I guess. And so then I decided, I was like, well, I should write this into something. But I was like, what's the concept? And I'm a huge horror fan, all kinds of horror, but I would say my favorite is zombie movies. I've seen so many zombie movies.
I feel you. I think I've seen them all. Yeah.
I must have. And especially when I was, and finally one day I was like, I had a dream, basically. I dream a lot of my ideas, which is weird, but I woke up and I was like, zombies. Okay, cool. Lifeguards versus zombies. And so I started writing a feature, which I finished. I'm actually working on a rewrite right now.
Cool.
But a friend of mine, I went to an AFI film festival, and he had a film called Psycho Hillbilly Cabin Massacre. And I saw this short film and I was like, I want that guy to direct it. So I did the LA thing, and I just walked up to him at the after party and I was like, hey dude, I have this idea and I'm wondering if you want to help me develop it, or if you want to help me like shoot a short or whatever as a proof of concept. And he loved it, and we were like fast friends. And so we got working on it real quick. We brought some other people in as producers. I mean, this was one of those, like, everyone's asking everybody favors. And so we got a team together, and I found a location, and we shot it.
It's not shot at the pool you used to work at and got all the ideas from?
No. That was an indoor pool, and they wouldn't let me use that. But it was at a YMCA. And so I started looking at, because I was like, well, I can call another YMCA and see if maybe they'll help me out. So it was actually shot at a pool in Diamond Bar.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was...
Well, that's the trick, right? For indie film resourcefulness, is to just leave the core LA area and everything gets a little easier to access.
Yeah. I mean, they were real sweet. Like they were like, well, what's your film about? What? And I kind of told them what it was, and the pool was closed at the time because it was September or October, but they hadn't like cleaned it out. I mean, it was clean, but they hadn't like put the cover over it yet or anything like that. And nobody was using the facility. When the pool wasn't open, the facility wasn't open. So they were like, sure, use it. So they sent one of their workers from the Diamond Bar YMCA to open up for us, and he just sat in the office watching TV, and we did our film in one day.
I really like also the boldness of making it a period piece and setting it in 1985. Now, obviously, you just have people in swim outfits. It's a little easier than if you needed full period costumes. It's contained to the pool, so there's not a lot of like vehicles or building signage that would give it away. Still a bold move for an indie film. Like, was there a reason that you wanted to set it in that era versus the present?
Yeah, there was and is. It's in the rewrite, and in the beginning, I wanted it to be beach lifeguards, and in the rewrite, it is beach lifeguards. But in 1985, the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, there was a big lawsuit against them for dumping hypodermic needles and any other kind of untreated water just straight into the ocean. And so they had to do a whole lot of cleanup. And so that was part of the idea, was that it's in the water. And at the very beginning of the short, when the girl is changing the radio station, you hear something like, a giant meteor lands in Crowley Lake or something like that. And so basically that's the concept. This thing from space lands in Crowley Lake, which is used to be the only, it's in the Mono Basin, and it used to be the only water supply for Los Angeles. It no longer is, but in 1985 it was. And so the water runs down the aqueduct pipes into the city, and everyone gets sick.
That's I know it's for the feature. That's a crazy amount of backstory that you try to summarize in a couple lines of a radio broadcast for the short. I think what's interesting too is, you've got this sort of social commentary about, big corporations and toxic dumpings. George Romero, obviously, you're a big zombie fan, always had a social commentary. There was a social commentary message in each one of his zombie films. Yep. And it feels like you're continuing that tradition with what you want to do with this film. On that note, I also feel like the zombies were also very Romero, and like the 80s style, the bluish skin, that sort of dead look. It pulled, like it was pulled right out of Day of the Dead, or I still think the best zombie movie ever made, the original Dawn of the Dead. Yep. So is that in homage to him, or was that a budget restriction reasons?
Well, listen, I mean, budget restriction was definitely part of it. I mean, I shot that whole thing with probably $1,200. Wow. And it was out of my pocket, but we put a thing out on Craigslist. I don't even know if people really use Craigslist too much anymore, but
I've used it to find some extras and stuff in LA. It's great.
Yeah. And I got a bunch, and I asked as many friends as I could, and so people came out, and we tried to do a lot of close-up shots and tried to set them what we could. I mean, there are definitely things that if I had a big budget, like I want to do a beach.
Yeah. But it might also take away from it, because what I love about your film is you use the budget restrictions or the time restrictions to your advantage to tell a very contained story. Because although your film's not a found footage film in the traditional sense,
right,
it's like a hybrid between that and a mockumentary, because it is like the news crew camera. But the best example I ever was watching The Making of Cloverfield. They said watching any movie that's found footage, it's like looking through a straw at life, where you're only seeing the viewpoint of that person with the camera. And your film does that, using that news camera technique very well, that he might only be getting a close-up. He might only be capturing this, and the rest is sound design. It's right. You used all the tricks of indie filmmaking very well to your advantage. And on that, like, I really love, I just made a true single take feature. I'm obsessed with single takes. There are these very long takes with the news camera, like, come over here, we got to capture this. But even with your edits, your film is still technically a single take, because the camera gets wet. So right. Although there's a cut, it's actually the camera losing a signal here and there, but it still feels like it plays like one take, because the camera is still just running, and now the audience is getting the glimpses of when the camera's still. I loved it. I thought it was great and very smart. Yeah,
I really appreciate that. I mean, I had a lot of help with that just from the director, and we talked a lot about how we were going to do this, and I think. No, what's the one with Elizabeth Olsen that came out that was all one take?
I haven't seen it, but Silent House, is that the
Silent House? Yeah. And they did a really good job of making those cuts too. If they were going from one room to another and they went through a dark hallway, so you couldn't really tell where the cuts were.
Which is all taking from Alfred Hitchcock, and Rope was the first to do it, where the camera would like move behind somebody's back, and that's where the cut would be hidden.
Right,
because film couldn't run a film magazine longer than 10 minutes at a time.
Right.
They had to hide cuts to do the effect, but
yeah. Editing it was a lot of fun. The
best thing about making my single take feature was not having to edit the movie. It was literally out of the camera and off to the sound design, like just done. It was amazing.
that's a feat.
It's a rare thing, but also I had zero gray hair before I started that movie, and now I don't recommend the single take thing to anybody who wants to keep budgets low and
Yeah,
and not gray prematurely,
for
perhaps
sure.
prematurely. Well, if the feature is going to be set on a beach, then David Hasselhoff has to have a role in this movie.
I would love to give David
Yeah.
Hasselhoff a role in the movie.
I feel like you're, if the film can be playful and fun at the same time, then you're in that realm of like Zombievers or the remake of Piranha 3D, where there is room to have these characters that
Yeah,
are famous from, you're essentially pitching Baywatch versus zombies, which I think is the greatest thing I've ever heard, and I need to see this movie. So,
awesome.
now this felt like, so would this essentially have been the opening scene from a movie? Because even the way it ends on like such a fun like cliffhanger where like you don't overstay your welcome with the short. It knows what it is, it gets in, it gives you the zombie fun in the water, and then we're out. Do you sort of envision this almost gets to serve as like a proof of concept of what you want to do in the future?
Yeah, that's basically what we did it as. It actually pulls from different parts of the movie, and we were like, if we wanted to make a short, what can we pull from? Very Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I guess. It's like back in the day when they're like, well, let's just like get this little bit and this little bit and this fighting scene, and that's our proof of concept. It's not the first scene in the movie. This would probably be like a midway point, actually. When the newscaster shows up in the script, it's actually, well, she probably shows up around page 32. The beginning takes place 10 years before at the Olympic trials for Montreal, and
Okay.
and Jimmy doesn't make it. He's not.
Okay. So he ends up a lifeguard. So
He
yeah.
ends up a lifeguard, and he ends up washed up, and you don't get all that, but he's a messy lifeguard. He's really washed up, and he needs to find a way to be a hero.
Well, I appreciate it even more. A lot of short films that are proof of concepts try to cram everything into that limited window instead of just capturing the fun and the spirit of the movie without having to draw it out with too much character backstory. And
Right.
they're literally trying to cram the whole feature into the short, and it often doesn't work. And
Yeah.
Go Montreal. My wife's from Montreal, big fan of the city, and anything. I'm Canadian, so anything Canada. I also really love the news reporter and the and everything I'm saying to the audience. I am not spoiling this movie. Like you will go and enjoy all of this, but I love her. The keep filming from the news reporter. I do love people who are overly dedicated to their job, because I'm like, she probably doesn't earn enough from this TV network to like risk her life for this. But it made me think of all the CNN and cable news reporters that like there was that trend for about 3 years of like who's willing to stand further out of the hotel into the hurricane to report like it's really bad out here, and that like the wind's whipping and like trees are flying past them. I'm like, we get it. You don't need to risk your life to do this, But
Yeah.
I thought the way you found humor in this, I thought was a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So you acted in this, you wrote it, produced it, you brought in a director, and now you're turning it into a feature. And that's a very important thing, especially now that production is, like you said, $1,200 gets you this. Do you have any words of encouragement for actors out there that aren't yet producing their own material?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, for me, on my journey in writing, I just started reading every book I could find. One of the best books you can read is Story by Robert McKee. It gives you such good, just good advice on how to write action, what kind of story you have. But he doesn't make you stick to a structure like maybe Save the Cat, which is also a good book. That's gotten me out of some jams. And this one's probably, the feature will be like a 15-beat structure. But my best advice is just like, do it. If you have an idea, do it. I mean, I didn't know how it was going to happen. I knew I had $1,200 in my pocket, and I was just like, I got some people on my side who liked the concept and liked the idea, and they were willing to come on and help me out because they thought it would be fun. And so you never know who you're going to find or who you're going to inspire. So talk about it, go to film festivals. That's that's where I found my director. I found him at the AFI Film Festival, and then he was able to bring on some people that he knew that were excited about the idea. And so I had a really good DP who is still working in the business. He probably wouldn't do a favor for me like that now, because he's doing lots of good work. And same with a lot of the people that did that with me. But just ask, write something that you think is good, write something that you think is a good idea, and reach out to people and ask. Because the worst thing they can do is say no. And that's not so bad. Yes.
Oh, so sorry. You might have to repeat all of that. I was too busy learning about story structure. No, this is one of the best books. As you were saying it, I looked over on my shelf, and this book is never more than about 6 feet away from me in any office, because I like to revisit it.
I revisit it all the time.
You're so right, though. Just got to get out there and do it. And it is amazing how many people are willing to help you fulfill your creative dream. If if you're just really sincere and have a really creative idea, everybody moved to LA to be creative, and we don't often get the chance to do that. So we all really deep down, of course, we all have to pay bills and everything else, but we've got weekends, we've got spare times that, like, maybe it means one less day at the beach or whatever, but people are very generous and willing to follow anybody who's leading a vision and has an interesting project. So I think that's the biggest thing. People just not being scared of taking that first step and just starting to ask. And you're right. Talk to everybody everywhere, because you never know who you're talking to across from at somebody's birthday party in LA, or, like if you're, wherever. LA, honestly, you will just stumble across people in the entertainment industry. And it's amazing how many times the most random encounters lead to such like wonderful collaborations.
Absolutely. And again, you don't need $1,200. I mean, and mine was at a pool. I didn't pay for the location. I didn't pay for the extras. I got a lot of favors, but feeding, it was mostly food to give to people. That's what I had to pay for. But besides that, I mean, you can do something with 2 characters in a room. I guess my final quick thought on LA is there will be people who will tell you that people in LA are selfish, or people in LA won't help you, or that's not true. I'm like, I don't know who those people are meeting, because I've met all the best people and all the most amazing people, and I feel, I feel like I've made a lot of great friends here, and it's my city. I love it, and people have always been there for me. And so you got an idea, write it. People will be there to help you and make it happen.
I couldn't agree more. Although I'm not currently in LA, my time there was just full of generous people that really wanted to be creative. And, when there's so many people pursuing the same dream in the same market, like they really are, everyone's there to, like, what's the a tide rises all ships equally. If everybody is trying to move forward together versus move forward apart in a smaller market. So Justin, listen, I loved your film. I laughed a lot. It hit all the right marks for a zombie fan like myself. You need to get the feature of this done just so that I can selfishly sit in the movie theater again, now the theaters are open, and watch it. But I appreciate you taking the time today to chat with us on Reveel'd.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.